you, Libby, Donna, and Bill. I appreciate you all inviting me here today. I have to admit, first time in a while, I've actually been nervous before a presentation. So if anybody saw me out front singing on your way in, that's why. That's how I get back into my little happy place and just resettle. So you don't want me to sing loud enough for anybody to hear me, though. So just say that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
It's my fault there's no mic tonight. I asked for there not to be one because I felt I could project enough for an hour. By the end of the night I'll be all scratchy sounded and sound like a completely different person, but that's fine. I might actually sound better that way. So. One of the things that I do, I've been doing this long enough, I ad-lib everything. I have an outline that I'm going to go through, but there's a lot of little side roads and journeys that I'm going to take. Just if you guys hear something you want to hear more of, throw something at me. Make sure it's not sharp. If you have questions, let's try to save questions for the end, though. If you can't hear something or you want to know a little more about something right then, maybe. But if it's a bigger question, let's save them to the end. I am going to try to get through my 30-some slides as fast as I can. So that also means that sometimes I'll be talking a little bit fast. If you don't hear something, just let me know. All right? The only other ground rule that I have is, well, I don't have any ground rules. So there you go. Every once in a while, I'm going to have to step aside and do this. I promise I won't make it take too long, but this first one will be the long one. So if you want to go to the next slide. This next slide will be up again at the end, so if you have your phones out and you want to get the QR code, it's my personal contact info. You don't need to get it right now. I do want to give a little bit more about my origin story because it's pretty interesting in terms of Route 66 and how I got here. So, as Libby mentioned, I grew up in Ohio. I'm Ohio by birth, Los Angeles by choice. I've been out here almost 30 years now. But when I moved out here, there was this new thing called the internet that a couple of you may have heard about. But there really wasn't much of an internet in 1996. So finding anything really meant going to the library still. There was one website that I found, though, that literally had turn-by-turn directions of how to follow every last remaining curve of Route 66. And in 1996, that was pretty fascinating to find that on the internet. So I printed it. And I kept printing, and kept printing, and kept printing. By 1997, it was done printing. But it was a pretty thick printout when everything was done. And I used that because I knew I was going to be following parts of the road. But I will tell you, honestly, I didn't know what I was getting into on that trip. Okay? I knew 66 existed, but I didn't know what made it important. And I didn't know why it was so important to so many people. But I always liked history, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go find little bits and pieces here and there and get on the interstate and get to LA because I've got to be in LA. I just needed to be here. And so what ended up happening is I first got on it in Oklahoma. I was going on and off and on and off and on and off. And there was one stretch in Oklahoma where the 66 literally was just this. And every once in a while, a little bit of a curve around a little hill, but it was just up and down. And right next to it was the freeway, just flat and straight. Now, my car, I felt like a Dust Bowl Okie. I did not have the mattress on top, only because I didn't bring it. Otherwise, that was the only place left for it when I was driving out. I did have everything that I could fit into my car in my car. And my AC was broken, so the windows were down. And, no tape deck at that time, so AM radio it was. But when I was on that stretch of 66, just doing this little bit up and down next to the freeway, the semi comes next to me on the freeway. And I mean, we're it's 100 feet away, 200 feet away, whatever it was. But he was pacing exactly the same speed as me for some reason. And I just yelled out my open window, "You fools over there don't know what you're missing." I didn't either, but I figured it out eventually. Next slide. So the why is Route 66 so special? And that means why is it special to me? Because it's really the same reason why it's special to so many other people. it really became more for me about people, not place. The stories that are told. And now I'm one of the ones telling the stories, and that's kind of weird for me in a way, but it's happened. But it's really the stories. And so for my origin story on 66, the big moment that happened to me was that I fell in love with Flagstaff, Arizona. Forgive me for that. I kept going back to Flagstaff whenever I could get back, after I first moved here. Because I really kind of still needed that space separate from Los Angeles. And so I kept going back, and I kept meeting this one guy. I had met him by chance when I moved out here. His name is Angel Delgadillo, and he's a barber in Seligman, Arizona. And he's considered the father, or the grandfather, the father, I don't remember, of Route 6, the father of Route 66. He's the one who began the preservation movement of Route 66 in the 1980s. So the road was decertified in 1985. In 1986, he started talking about preservation. And when I first met him, he was asking questions of me. He's like, why are you here? Why are you doing Route 66? And I'm like 24 years old. He's like, you're young, you're this little kid. What do you know? Why are you doing this? And he was asking all these questions of me. And so I told him I'm moving to LA, I want to get into film, all that stuff. And every time back to Flagstaff, I stopped in to talk to him. And every time back, he remembered me. He's still alive. He's like, I want to say 98 at this point. So he would have already been in his 70s at the time that I first met him, and he was still remembering me by name every time back. That's my origin story. That's what I love about 66. It's talking to all the people. And being in Los Angeles at the end of the road, all of the people come to us. They're coming to be in LA just like I did. They're coming to get to the end of the road. They're coming to finish that journey just like I did. And that's the part about Route 66 that means the most to me. So go ahead and do next. But we talk about people and we talk about stories, and those stories have to be told, right? So the thing that makes Route 66 different than any other highway is right up here. Now, I'm going to guess probably everybody knows the one in the middle, right? What about the one on the right? Does anybody know who's on the right? The important one in the photo on the right is the gentleman is Bobby Troop. Does anybody know anything about why Bobby Troop is important to Route 66? Go ahead.
Yeah, if I vaguely remember, I do remember that he had a nightclub in Toluca Lake, and he wrote, Nelson Riddle wrote.
Nelson Riddle wrote the one for the TV show.
For the TV show.
But you're on the right path.
Yeah, and he wrote the one that has lyrics.
Yes, so the song Get Your Kicks on Route 66 was written by Bobby Troop in 1942. And then, how about the one on the left? Does anybody know the one on the left? This was my trip. I heard it. John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath.
Who's the female in the right picture?
I knew someone was going to ask me that, and I looked it up and I forgot.
Julie London.
Thank you. Julie London. That's right. So John Steinbeck from Grapes of Wrath. This is why I didn't do a mic and I'm not using the podium. Martin Milner and George Maharis from the Route 66 TV show. And then Julie London and Bobby Troop. Now the story about Bobby Troop, this story is amazing. You guys all know how the song goes, right? Yeah. I'm not going to sing, I promise. But there's one city that's out of order. Does anybody know what the city that's out of order is? Do you remember it? Flagstaff, Arizona. Don't forget Winona. Winona, Arizona is out of order. His wife, wife at the time, Cindy, gave him that line. But they started in Pennsylvania. And they were driving US Highway 40, heading west. And I think it was Cindy that said to Bobby, you should write a song about this. And he's like, no, we're going to be getting on Route 66. And so all the way at the beginning of their journey, he was already in his head thinking about that. And so as they were driving on 66, he's writing that song. He gets to Los Angeles and is able to get Nat King Cole to be the first one to sing and record it.
Wow.
You talk about telling a story the right way, that's telling the story. So that's where I'm saying Route 66 is the people telling their story, but LA, being their destination, gave them that voice that no other road would have. And that's the only difference between Route 66 and US 40, US 99, US 101, sorry. Lincoln Highway, have any of you heard of the Lincoln Highway? I'm so glad I had some yeses to that. Sometimes I get no. The Lincoln Highway is actually the first transcontinental highway in the US. It was 13 years older than Route 66 and much more historically significant in a lot of ways. But Route 66 had LA. So, Route 66, is this the end of Route 66? There's a lot of things that we can mean by the end. For me, the end of the road is never there. There's always another journey to take. You can go to the next one. We talked a little bit about the map earlier. I'm not going to go over the whole 8 states, guys. 1, I'm not an expert on the other 7. 2, I'm already going to be cutting it close, I can tell you that. But you can see a lot changes in your dots over here, right? You get a pretty good number of dots in there, but all the different communities, all the different cities as you get to the end of the road will play a big part in what we talk about in a little bit. Okay? So, my question that I have to have everybody give me the right answer, please. If you don't give me the right answer, I'm going to leave right now. No, I'm kidding. Did the road ever actually go to the Santa Monica Pier?
No.
You can tell by the way I asked that question. The answer is no, it did not. So there were 4 different endpoints, western termini of Route 66 during its lifespan. The original one was in downtown Los Angeles, on Broadway at 7th Street in the heart of the theater district from 1926 to 1936. In 1936, the road was extended to Santa Monica. It ended at Lincoln Boulevard, on Lincoln Boulevard at Olympic. This was before Interstate 10. So Lincoln and Olympic were 2 streets, and that was the intersection with Pacific Coast Highway. And the reason, just so everybody knows why it ended there instead of any other number of places that it could have gone, at that time there was a legislation on the national level that said that any U.S. highway had to end either at the end of that road or at an intersection with another highway. So in this case, in 1936, Pacific Coast Highway was US 101 alternate. So it was a US highway. So it intersected at the US highway so that we could have a path north. In 1964, California decided we have too many signs with too many different road numbers all on the same road, and we want to get rid of that. The perfect example, which I wish I had thought to put this in, everyone knows where Cajon Pass is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the Cajon Pass at one point in time there was a set of signs, and it wasn't on one pole because there were so many that they wouldn't fit on one pole, so they did the 2 poles next to each other. If I remember correctly, it was something like 16 different signs. And so California in 1964 said we're getting rid of all that, so right after that they shortened the highway to Colorado Boulevard at Arroyo Parkway in Pasadena, which therefore connected it to the 110, so it was still connected to another highway. And then in 1976, that was the beginning of the end in terms of certification for the road. California said, okay, we've got the interstate through the Mojave Desert now. We don't need you anymore, Route 66. Thank you very much for playing, but your game is over. And so California obliterated 66 within the state entirely in 1976.
What does that mean, certification? Lost its certification?
Okay, so how do I put this? Essentially, it comes down to funding. So since it is no longer a US highway, there's no longer federal funds to maintain it.
Federal funding, okay.
So that's in essence what you're looking at, is funding sources. Going to go next. I am not going to go through this. There's a lot of reasons why I'm not going to go through this. It's all in my head. I could go through it and not look at it once. Unless you know the roads and are picturing it, it doesn't mean much. The important part of this is, as 66's lifespan continued, the dynamic of the road changed. Initially, it went through every town as a 2-lane street on Main Street. It was meant as a commercial route connecting the major port of Chicago with the major port of Los Angeles and connecting commerce the whole way. So it went through every town because every town was part of the commerce. And as its lifespan grew and traffic grew and commerce grew, the road grew. And so now the road is 4 lanes and it's too wide to go through Main Street. So let's just do a little bypass. So in Los Angeles, between Old Town Pasadena and downtown LA, in the span of 15 years, Route 66 took 5 different alignments. Part of that was construction, part of that was tourism, part of that was commercial. So that's the basics of that. If anybody really wants to delve into that in deep, deep discussion, email me afterward. I'll send you all the maps and let you have at it. Go ahead. Los Angeles. I'm going to say one thing about myself that my mom has told me. This is probably the thing I'm most proud about in my life, is what my mom said to me. My mom has said to me she has never seen any one person as in love with a place as I am with Los Angeles. I said at the beginning, Ohio by birth, Los Angeles by choice. So why is Los Angeles so special to Route 66? Well, for starters, in the Route 66 corridor in Los Angeles County, there are roughly 100 National Register of Historic Places landmarks, just within the corridor. These are a few of them, and you'll see them here. I'm sure a lot of them are familiar to you. Rialto Theater in South Pasadena, which is where I live now. The Bradbury Building, downtown LA, with an insert of what it looked like in Blade Runner. The Rose Bowl, great story about the Rose Bowl too, I'll say in a second. The top right is the Aztec Hotel in Monrovia, and then the bottom right is the Colorado Street Bridge in Pasadena. Now that top center one, anybody want to take a guess what that is in the top center? What's that? Facebook. No? It's not a gravestone, I'll tell you that much. So the 11 at the top center in the circle is the miles to downtown Los Angeles. I don't know what the 220, 222 is. I've never yet been able to figure that out. FB is Foothill Boulevard. This is an original highway marker that predates Route 66. It's on what is now Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. And if I didn't cut out that left side of the photo, it would look really cool sitting there in front of McDonald's. But that's actually a National Register landmark also. So, and this is the one. So we talk about iconic portions of highway, right? What is iconic? And for me, it's this number 4 down here. A person or thing that is revered or idolized. I'm pretty confident that I can say Route 66 is iconic. It is definitely revered. It is definitely, sorry, some of these other roads idolize Route 66. If we're going to personify it in that way and talk about the storytelling and the idea of getting out there and being able to draw people in, other roads just revere Route 66. So how can you have a highway, a piece of roadbed that is iconic? From the concrete portion, looking at the physical idea of what a road is, how does it become iconic? In Los Angeles, we have some great examples. I pointed out the Foothill Boulevard mile marker. That is literally a piece of concrete that is a National Register landmark. I think that can qualify as iconic. The Colorado Street Bridge, definitely a piece of actual physical road that has been preserved and maintained because of its iconic nature to the city of Pasadena. I'm going to add in things like the wide medians, and I'm going to go into a brief story why. Sorry, every once in a while I'm just going to make sure that I'm okay on time, and if I'm not, yell at me. The wide medians to me are iconic, and the reason why is Route 66 was trying to go into major highways, right? Into the major areas of commerce, the major population bases. It was trying to hit the best way to get to as many people as you could. The wide medians of Los Angeles signify trolley lines. It's that simple. The trolley lines are where the people were, and so Route 66 went to where the people were. That photo, by the way, is El Sereno, which is part of the city of Los Angeles. And you can't really see it, but right here is the little Route 66 shield on the side. That's on Huntington Drive. On the other side is El Camino Real bell. So they get that whole transportation idea. A real quick story, digressing a little bit here in El Sereno. I loved when I was doing my research for the book that I did. I found this article from, I just drew a blank. It was the early predecessor for AAA's newsletter, right? But it was an article about Huntington Drive in El Sereno and how every year they shut down half of it. So if you're familiar with it, it's two sets of roadbed that are like 4 lanes wide each, with this huge median in between it where the trolley was. Well, in 1912, 1913, one year they would shut down one side of it to maintain it and use the other side for traffic. The next year they'd flop it. And the reason why is it was dirt. And much of the traffic was horse-drawn buggies. And the automobiles that were there were even worse for when it rained. The ruts were so bad and so deep, and then the road would dry, and it took them so long to repair it, they had to go every year back and forth between the two. Absolutely fascinating story for me. A couple of other little things with the iconic nature of the road and the roadbed itself. I once heard, this was so funny when it first came up. Probably like 20 years ago, this little town, Dwight, Illinois, started talking about how they had so much traffic on Route 66 that they had to build pedestrian tunnel under their main street just to get from one side to the other because traffic was nonstop. And I started thinking about that a little bit, and I realized we have them all over LA. All over LA. And I started looking, and I started trying to count the ones along Route 66. I couldn't even do it. I just gave up. But to me, that's one of those things that I realized, like, that's actually part of the iconic roadside, like, actual concrete part of the road's nature and history. And then the other thing I listed, and I'll explain the photos in a second, bypass portions. Like, we talk about the realignments for Route 66. All of a sudden next year it's over here. We're going to move it and have it go this way instead. So that meant that wherever the road had been before, all of a sudden no longer has that traffic. And so that's why the decertification comes into play, because when the highway was decertified, all of the traffic then was on the interstate, and so all of that commerce was gone from those communities. And we have that in LA. We have communities that were bypassed. The first community anywhere along Route 66 to be bypassed by a freeway, Highland Park. So that bypass section of the road really does matter in a lot of ways. The two photos are from Highland Park. Highland Park has the North Figueroa Association has been active in doing sign relighting. And so the one on the left is Amy Inouye from Chicken Boy. If anybody knows Chicken Boy, that's Amy, that's Chicken Boy's mom, pointing at the Highland Theater. And then the other sign is the Manning's Coffee Store. Manning's was like Starbucks 80 years ago. And that's the last remaining lit sign of the Manning's Coffee change. This one is, God, I'm gonna go so long. I just know I'm gonna go so long. You guys got an extra hour on you today? Okay, the Figueroa Street tunnels, you guys know the tunnels on the 110 freeway north of downtown LA? Those are called the Figueroa Street tunnels. The last one that opened in 1936. It is actually the closest one to downtown. The other three opened in 1931. That carried Route 66 traffic two directions when those 4 tunnels were open. Those are the only remaining vehicle tunnels that were a part of Route 66 anywhere. Chicago to Santa Monica. There was only one other one. That one was on Broadway at Fort Ord in downtown LA. So all 5 of the tunnels that existed as part of Route 66 were all in LA City. Go ahead. 4-level interchange, you guys all know that too, right? This is really fast. That is the first freeway-to-freeway connector ramp anywhere in the nation. I forgot to mention with this, I almost forgot to mention, the Arroyo Seco Parkway, the 110 Pasadena Freeway, the first freeway portion of Route 66. It opened December 30th, 1940. They had to get it open in time to get to the parade on the 1st. I'm not joking, they actually opened it on the 30th just to make sure that it was open before the parade. It was designed as a scenic byway. It was designed as a parkway, not a freeway. It is a National Register landmark. It is on the Historic Architectural and Engineering Record. And it is the only national scenic byway anywhere in the United States, not just on 66, but anywhere, that is fully contained in a metropolitan area. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay, you can go. I don't even need to talk about that. Iconic portions of the highway. That was there because that's the terminus. That's the westernmost part of where Route 66 went. It ended where Mel's Diner is now. That was originally the Penguin Cafe. And that's where the western terminus of Route 66 was at. So I've been talking about LA County, and I'm the president of the California Route 66 Association, so it would be really bad of me not to talk about the rest of the road in our state. So let's just talk about the largest county on Route 66. Route 66 in California traverses 2 counties, Los Angeles and, go ahead and switch, San Bernardino. San Bernardino County is the largest county in the United States by geographic area. And so we have like 315 roughly miles of Route 66 in our state. And I think if I remember correctly, this is top of my head, about 230 of them are San Bernardino County. We also have the most bridges of any Route 66 state in terms of Route 66. Going through the desert, there was a lot of places where you had the little washes, and every wash had a bridge. And so there are approximately 100 bridges in the desert portion of Route 66 between Needles and Ludlow. The 2 signs here, the one on the right is Roy's Cafe in Amboy, and you can't really see it, but that was the night that they relit the sign back in November of 2019. And they have their own airstrip out back, so there's actually planes and everything parked around the sign as well. And then on the left in Chambliss, just a little bit to the east of Amboy, is the Roadrunners Retreat. That sign is in the midst of being restored as well. And we've been actively involved in grant applications for the Roadrunner. And for Roy's, the general manager at Roy's is one of our board members. Just a little bit further east from both of those, I just had to throw this photo in because I love this place. Katy Summit, this is a then and now. The now was a few years ago. This area is actually not accessible right now because a lot of those bridges got washed out. in flash floods, so that's actually not accessible right now, but if you want to get like iconic desert imagery, that's one of the best places that I know to go. Between Victorville and Barstow, Interstate 15, getting my directions right for you guys, Interstate 15 kind of does one of these, and 66 did this. So it's this bigger loop and sea around it. And one of the communities that it went through was Hellendale. And Elmer Long built a bottle tree ranch there, totally free, just found bottles and started putting them up. Yeah, it's just fascinating. You can tell it's a just photographer's heaven, really. Sunrise is good, sunset's good. I think sunrise is a little bit better. Just different angles and everything, but yeah, great, fascinating, amazing, incredible place to stop. So highly recommend that. Don't say anything bad about the kid, just gonna let you know that's my son. So. Off limits. Again, iconic Route 66. I mean, Wigwam Motel in San Bernardino. If you've seen the movie Cars, that's one of the Cozy Cone. This was one of the inspirations for it. There are 2 Wigwam motels on Route 66. The one in San Bernardino, one in Holbrook, Arizona. There's a third one not on Route 66 in Cave City, Kentucky on US Highway 60. Not that I'm a road geek, but I am. And there were 11 originally, so those 3 are the only 3 that are left. The Sycamore Inn on the right, again, just in 1848, it was a stagecoach stop originally. Great steakhouse out in Rancho Cucamonga. And then my son at the McDonald Museum in San Bernardino, which is a free museum, and it's incredible. If you guys want to go look for all that memorabilia that you used to have from when you went to go to they have it. And they have it international as well. It's amazing. But my son was having a good time, so it was good. Now here's my dirty secret. You guys all ready? Listen close. I don't own a car. Just think about that. I actually rented one because I have a few things going on, so I rented one today. But yeah, how many roads guys do you know don't own a car? So there you go. Go ahead. So that's why I don't own a car, everybody. Yep. Good again. I've gotten really used to using mass transit. I throw this up here just in case anybody doesn't know and wants to know. We do have one of the best mass transit systems in the country in Los Angeles. It just doesn't seem like it because remember all that traffic you're sitting in? The buses sit in it and they have to go just as far as you go in your car. So the thing that makes LA's transit system incredible, first of all, the geographic area that it covers. Secondly, the interagency collaborations. So I can take my metro bus by where I live, switch over to Foothill Transit to go into the San Gabriel Valley, and I don't have to pay extra fare. I do have to pay a transfer for that, but I don't have to pay full fare on both. And they have all of that across all of their systems. I do want to point out one other thing. I every once in a while go down a different road. Any soccer fans?
Yes.
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 LAFC. Always have to point that out. Soccer fans. Go ahead. So yeah, I'm not going to spend my time on much of the mass transit for you guys as to why. Obviously, my feeling is I'm not sitting in my car. I'm able to do other stuff while I'm on the bus and the train. But if you're a tourist doing Route 66 and you're trying to say you've done all of Route 66, it's going to be hard to get you out of your car at the end of the road, right? But the big issues that I can tell travelers today, they don't have to try to manipulate LA traffic, which is a big bonus for them. They don't have to find parking. And if you think about it from a tourist perspective and you're trying to do Route 66, you're trying to hopscotch all these different places. And if you're trying to hit 3-4 different places in a day, you could be spending $100 or more just on parking. So for the tourist, that's a really big deal. Getting to actually see what you're driving by, right? It's so much easier to look out the window of a bus while somebody else is driving than to look out your car at the brake lights in front of you and have to hit your brake. And then, like I said, Metro passes, saving money. So, go ahead. There is actually a way to do mass transit through all of LA County along Route 66. And this is the first part of it. You can go ahead to the next one. That's the brief instruction. You come into Claremont on 188. You can either transfer to the 187 in Azusa, or you can get on the A line in Azusa and come all the way to downtown. That basically parallels Route 66 the whole way to downtown LA. From downtown LA, you get on the 4 or 704 Rapid, and it goes all the way down Santa Monica Boulevard. It's all on Route 66 the whole way. So it is doable. Don't ask me how many days it takes, though. But, you know, I look at Route 66 a little bit differently than a lot of the other association presidents. Definitely a lot differently than the tourists in a lot of ways. I've done walks on Route 66, and I've done hikes that have been up to 12 miles in a day that are urban hikes. And the things that you see when you're on foot, even different than a bus, are amazing. And the only example I'm going to give, I was doing one of my hikes, and we were going down Fair Oaks in South Pasadena there? Yeah, still South Pasadena. And we're crossing over the Arroyo Seco Parkway. And as we're about to go across the ramp to get onto the freeway, I just stopped in the middle of the on-ramp in the crosswalk and looked down. And there was a date stamp in the middle of that crosswalk from November 1940, which means it was placed there as part of the construction of the parkway. That's one of those things where I geek out. Not everybody else would geek out, but you're never going to see that in any vehicle. You're only going to see that walk in the road. And people do actually walk end to end. They bicycle end to end. There was somebody doing a skateboard. I can't even remember what else. There's been all kinds of crazy things. I think somebody had a unicycle at one point. Yeah, I don't even know. Anyway, taking us back to the end here. Our mission with the California Historic Route 66 Association is to preserve, promote, and educate about Route 66 in California. Hopefully I've done a little bit of that today. We come out and do these as often as we can, as often as we're invited. If you know any other organizations that are looking for speakers, please feel free to reach out. Actually, if you want to do the next, after you're done with the photo. If you want to go to the next slide, I promised the QR code would be up again. So the next slide is my QR code. For the soccer fans, you're going to notice it again. That's my other passion, if you can't tell. So yeah, if you have any other organizations that need speakers, please feel free to let me know. We go throughout the state. We don't just stay on 66. So if you need anything, let me know. And we'll go from there.
Scott,
What time were we supposed to?
well, this is good. Can you take a few questions?
Yes.
I have one.
Yes.
And maybe I'll just start that. I was
Perfect.
curious, because this is such an iconic road, is there any one meal that is an iconic meal that's associated with Route 66? For instance, I had a hot dog and mustard and sauerkraut this afternoon for lunch, thinking that that would be appropriate. But is there something better I should have had?
Well, let's see. Again, how long do I have? A lot of it depends on place, honestly. So I'm drawing a blank on the name of it in Oklahoma. That's like chicken fried steak. There's Mel's would tell me to go with a different choice. Like there's Donut Man in Glendora. Food is just a huge thing on Route 66. I don't remember when she put it out, but Quinta Scott did a Route 66 cookbook. I think that's who it was. I'm drawing a blank. It was a Route 66 cookbook that was just taking recipes from all of like the best diners on the road. And then there's another gentleman named T. Lindsay Baker who's working on recreating iconic recipes from the 30s and 40s of Route 66. So it really is, a lot depends on place. Ted Drews in St. Louis is going to tell you it's just all about the concrete. And by that I mean their frozen yogurt. So a lot depends on place. Funny story, thank you for reminding me, we talked about this earlier, so you gave me my lead in. October 12th, our association is having our annual members only event. And we were hosting it in Glendora at one of the diners there. And we were looking at menu and we decided to go buffet. And then we were looking at like, what do we want to do? And we decided to go, let's go comfort food. This is crazy. Let's keep it simple. Meatloaf and fried chicken. Genius, easy. So that's what we're doing for our annual meeting because we thought it would be fun. Anybody else? Yes.
Scott, when you and I talked, I would like you to tell the guests about the hope that it will become a historic project, and tell us about the other ones.
Oh boy. So our centennial is coming up in 2026. I know Bill mentioned that earlier. I know we still have it. He mentioned that earlier. And a lot of what we're doing right now is gearing up towards that centennial. And one of the things that we've been working on for a long time is a national trail status for all of Route 66 from Chicago at its end in Chicago to Santa Monica at its beginning. I'm like that. Petty, true, but I'm like that. So we've been working on trying to get national trail status for it. And the thing that's kind of difficult in a way, first of all, there's only, I can't remember the number, I just drew a blank on it. It was like 11 or 16, it's a really small number of national trails. But none of them are roads. There are things like the Oregon Trail, the Trail of Tears, whatever the other, they're all really based on footpaths. So this would be the first one, the first trail that is a road. And we've been having a lot of problems initially because the first comment from Congress is, it's not a trail. And so it took us about 3 years just to get past the it's not a trail. So we're close right now to national trail status. I don't want to say we're going to get it, but we're really close. California's representatives have been very supportive. One of our representatives is the co-sponsor, or co-author, of the bill. And then we've already had, I think, 3 more come on as co-sponsors. So we're really doing well with California, but we're having some trouble in some of the other states. So, and that is federal legislation, so it does have to go through Congress. Yes.
Hi. How many miles is Route 66, and could you show the map again, because I'd love to take a picture again.
13-ish on the map. Do you want me to find it and tell you how far back?
2,300 miles, isn't it?
The miles itself depends on what day you want to ask me. I alluded to all the realignments, right? And so as you're having different realignments in all these different places happening at all the same time, from one day to the next, the mileage might have changed. So we go with 2,448 miles. Thank you. We go with 2,448 miles as the accepted number. I still don't know where we got that number, so if anybody finds out, let me know. But yeah, so it's about 2,400 miles, roughly. And the rough midpoint is Adrian, Texas. And there's a midpoint cafe. I saw your hand first.
Okay. 2 questions. How many Burma signs were along? And also, how did you get here from Pasadena? I'd be curious about your route.
All right, so I cheated and rented a car. Because I need it Friday and Saturday as well, so I cheated and rented a car. And no, I did not take Route 66. The Burma shave signs, do you all know Burma shave signs? Okay, then I don't need to say what they are, but I don't, honestly, like a total number, I don't know, but look it up, there is a Burma shave book, which is a pretty fantastic book that had a lot of the old slogans and everything as well. When I get to time, just tell me to cut off.
Oh, we'll take a few more
I
questions.
was gonna say, I can go all night, so I'm totally fine. I see a hand back there. Yes.
Well, first of all, for food, Laguna Burger, have you been there?
No.
It's from the, well, 1930s burger place on the Laguna Reservation in New Mexico that's
Okay.
been there forever.
Okay.
Anyway.
I'll keep that in mind for my next New Mexico trip.
You mentioned that the signs stop at Topak?
So in 1975 is when they decided to decertify. 1976 is when it became official. The official western end of Route 66 at that time was the California-Arizona border at Topak, Arizona.
But they, I went looking for the Baghdad Cafe, the movie,
Yep.
and to find it, got off the freeway at a place that had signs. It's east of Barstow.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
it had 66 signs.
What you see now are not U.S. highway signs. They're historic Route 66 signs.
Oh, okay.
And that's on that's on a DOT by DOT basis. So like you don't see any Route 66 signs in Los Angeles. Well, there's still a few left from when they tried to do it in the 90s, but you basically don't see Route 66 signage in LA city limits, okay? If you go into, I love these two, I wish I had photos with me to show everybody. Beverly Hills has a beautiful Route 66 sign. They put the shield in the Beverly Hills sign. It is gorgeous. West Hollywood took the shield and put a rainbow up out of it.
Wow.
Beautiful sign, love that sign. Some of the local districts, local communities have done their own version to publicize, hey, we're on 66, but we're our own community and we love what we are too. And so it's a way to kind of bring that together. And I think Beverly Hills and West Hollywood are far and away the two best examples I know of that. So you do see this, the numbers, they're just not a certified highway and an official US highway sign. I thought I saw, I will get that. I keep looking at you. I will come back to you next, I promise.
All right, so we're nerding out about freeways. Freeways east and west are generally even numbers.
Yeah.
Freeways north-south.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'll repeat,
Okay.
because I know where it's going already.
And I also heard as a child, there's 5 miles between bridges on freeways, so military could land.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard that. Okay. So,
And second question, what part of Ohio are you from?
Cleveland.
Well,
Cleveland area. I haven't even been back. Well, I've been back once. I caught COVID, so I'm not going back again.
No one goes to Chicago, so I think.
Yeah, I grew up outside of Cleveland, on the east side. The second part of the first question was that there are 5 miles between bridges on highways, and I don't know that that's true. I have not heard that. I would have to look at that. But the bigger question was about numbers. I'm trying to like not look into the light, but move a little bit. There, that's the spot.
Cameraman wants you back on the light.
U.S. highway numbers and interstate highway numbers. In brief, east-west highways are even numbers and north-south are odd numbers. In terms of the U.S. highways, which was Route 66, which are the black on white signs, the higher the number, the further south or west the highway was, or is. And for the interstate highway system, which is a whole nother presentation I do, no, just kidding. I actually can talk at length about that too, but the interstate highway system are the white on red and blue signs, like Interstate 10 is interstate highway, and the 101 freeway is US highway. The Hollywood freeway is US highway. And so for the interstates, the lower the number, the further north, no, I'm sorry, the further south, because I said lower. The lower the number, the further south or west. And it's the higher the number for the US highways are south and west. That way they didn't have overlapping numbers, except for in the middle, which was actually like Pennsylvania or something. It wasn't actually geographic middle. I promised you were going to go next.
Yes, I'm guessing that everyone here has been on part of Route 66, but I'm curious on how many people have done LA to Chicago and back.
Good question. How many people have done LA to Chicago and back? I have to raise both hands because I'm in the place. Not very many.
Very good.
Not very many.
How long does it take?
How long do you have? and then when you tell me how long you have, add another week. And that's how long it takes. Seriously, the more time you have, the more you're going to see, the more you're going to enjoy, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to meet people. People say they've done it in 3 days, but they're not really doing it in 3 days. My shortest trip was 11, and I didn't see half of what I wanted to. It's the more you have, the better off you are. But you can do it in, I say 2 weeks is kind of the minimum that you want to allow for. I saw another hand over here. Yes.
A little clarification on the discussion about interstate highways.
Yes.
It really had to do with the Eisenhower administration.
Yes,
That
very much so.
every certain length of interstate has to be straight for at least a mile. So just in case of a war, there could be landings at any point along the interstate highway. That's one reason why Eisenhower got funded.
So you're going to get me to make sure that I have to talk about my interstate highway knowledge. Okay. I'll do this really, really, really fast. In 1929, Dwight Eisenhower was a colonel. This is off the top of my head, not my strength. Colonel in the Army, and he had been in World War I and said, you know, that Audubon thing was pretty cool. I want one. Basically is what he said. He's like, the Army did a convoy from Washington, D.C. up to New York City and then across to San Francisco. And it took them 3 months. And he was the photographer on that trip. And so when he was president, he's like, we need to do the Audubon. That's how the interstate highway system came to be. And it took, I think if I remember correctly, 4 separate pieces of legislation. There's a 4th one that tailed in at the end to finally, I don't want to say finish, but finalize what the plan was for the interstate highway system. And so it is called, officially it is known as the Dwight D. Eisenhower Interstate Defense Highway System. And defense as part of that, because it was troop movements, was what he was eyeing. Anybody else? I haven't had to go for water for a while, so let me do that.
Scott, what I'd like to suggest, I need
Yes.
your help on one thing, but also everyone, we can continue the conversation in the lobby after we do our drawing, because we have 2 big boxes of Porto's cookies for you, chocolate chip and oatmeal. So we hope that you'll stay and continue the conversation. But first and foremost, Scott, to be a true Palisades, you have to have a blanket. So we want to give you this in recognition and in gratitude for your wonderful talk. Awesome. Okay?
And it is a cold night, so.
So in here are the second half of all of the tickets that people have. So I'm going to be so kind to stir it up and pick the big one because you have.
You're not going to be able to call me a cheater. Just one? Not six?
Just one for the blanket and then two more for a packet of wonderful postcards that Doug Dale put together on Palisades. So, okay.